is up, everyone? My name is Josh Robinson. You're here on a special edition of Are We Recording Yet? The show I had back late last year, early this year, of just a conversation between different people within this little wrestling community that we have going on over on socials, Twitter, whatever you want to really say. I hope everyone is having a lovely day. As you can see, I'm not alone. I have a wonderful guest today. The first time I'm actually able to talk to this lovely person who I'm just seeing kind of everywhere all over Twitter. I'm not going to lie to you. You're kind of a big deal. You know, like pat yourself on the back. But for anyone, it's kind of tradition around here to let my guests introduce themselves. But for anyone that doesn't know who you are, introduce yourself and let people know what you're kind of about.
Legit question, but are you recording? Because the icon's not in the corner of my
I'm
screen.
I'm recording on OBS. Don't worry, I record externally.
Okay.
Audio's better that way.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like Josh said, I am Ella J, doing a lot of things. You probably know me either from GAW or maybe a Wrestling Gal podcast, which I am primarily known for, I guess. At least that's where I started with everything. It's coming up on 2 years, and it's all about the female perspective on women's wrestling and just pro wrestling in general. I also am the editor of GAW TV's GAWcast, and I also work with SE Scoops, Bell to Bells, and WrestleZone now.
Look at you go. I like when people, there's nothing I love more than when other like content creators just got to list off the things that they do. I'm like, yes, I love when people just
It's
seeing people
wild.
thrive. It happens so like fast for you. Well, at least from the outsider's perspective, I'm just like, look at Ella. She's just doing all this stuff and you're like keeping yourself busy and like, it's pretty crazy when you actually think, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm a huge content creator at all because I'm not, but it is pretty crazy when you like go through all the stuff that you do and you're like, wow, I actually do kind of a lot of little things.
Yeah, I honestly haven't had an actual day off in probably over a month now because I pretty much fill them on my days off from my day job, like
Mhm.
today and tomorrow. So I don't really know what a day off is. I can't do it anymore. I feel like I need to be doing something, you know?
Mhm. I'm like that as well. I like to keep myself busy and just keep myself, I guess my mind just kind of stimulated at this point because we talked a little bit in the pre-chat before, but it's a pretty insane world at the moment just trying to get out of like adjusting out of pandemic. Are we in a pandemic? Are we not in a pandemic? Things are going out of control. Things are not it's just all crazy. So, I think keeping yourself fairly busy is probably for our own sanity at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's just hard sometimes when you're working. Well, I'm working forty,
Me too.
45 hours at my day job and trying to fit in everything else. Like, there will be nights I'm up super late, like writing or working on stuff or prepping for interviews. And I cut it close sometimes. So I don't know how I do it sometimes, but thank God for calendars and notes apps and that stuff to keep me in schedule pretty much.
Yeah, I could imagine, I work in retail and stuff, so um
So do I.
it's been
Wild.
interesting over the last year and a half. Isn't it crazy that
That's a
we've been
nice
in
way to
this.
put it, Josh.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remain as nice about it as possible.
Yeah.
It's been its own challenge in itself, just being
Yeah.
like not only in a pandemic and being like, oh my god, I have to go to work and be around all of this kind of stuff, but then also on top of it, people are at a level of stress that is not normal and they're not really knowing how to adjust. So who do they kind of look to is like the retail workers, and it's like, okay, like we just kind of been,
Mhm.
and we're not. It's not like who's schooled on a pandemic. You know what I mean? Like who's like prepared for a pandemic. You don't really think about it. You never really. It's a once in a lifetime thing. Well, you would hope it's a once in a lifetime kind of deal. I wouldn't want to deal with this again in like 20 years, but it
No.
is pretty wild, isn't it?
No, ugh, it's been so wild, but I feel at least like day job aside, I feel like content creators, at least in the wrestling industry, have kind of been cut a break, and it's also kind of been a benefit for us because wrestlers have been more accessible, and
Mhm.
everybody involved now has had more time available since they were away from shows. So it was kind of a benefit to content creators and interviewers and broadcasters and stuff because you could do stuff like this, like virtual interviews or
Mhm.
conversations. So I know, especially once the pandemic started, that really accelerated my, I guess, career and like number of episodes and content that I was producing because more people were available during that point. But that aside, it's been absolutely crazy. Agreed.
Yeah, and you are right. We've had a lot more time to just have more time to create content. I started streaming like pretty much, on Twitch in that time just because I mean, more people were available at home. They're just sitting at their computer screens. It's like, okay, this is a good time as any just to start doing that kind of stuff. And at least we can take that kind of positive away, is that this last year and a half, I've pumped out more content than I ever have, and like gotten like so
Yeah.
much better for it,
Mhm.
because you're getting in reps of interviews and just talking to people like yourself and having the time to be like, hey, we got an hour to kill. Do you want to just come and, shoot the shit for a little while with me? Because we probably got nothing better to do.
I mean, like you said though, it's been really tough, and like you said, it's really been a workhorse past year. Like the year before, the first like 6 months I did my podcast, I had 10 episodes. Last year alone, I had 95 episodes in a calendar year, and
That sounds right.
yeah, yeah. And most of it was when after the pandemic started, because more people were home and I kind of felt more motivated, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been absolutely wild, and sometimes I don't know how we do it.
Oh, me either. Me either. You and me both on that one. But this is a really loaded question, and I'm not even sure it's one you'll be able to answer, because it's just so. Like, you'll probably really had to think about it. Is why wrestling for you? Because I think it's different for everybody. Why do you watch wrestling? Why do you love wrestling? Why do you like to talk about wrestling? Because let's putting all things aside, I love wrestling. You love wrestling, but it's a pretty crazy, intense world. And it's like, people that aren't in wrestling and don't watch wrestling, it's really hard to explain what the hell wrestling is, because some are like, I don't get it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. There's
Mhm.
no real other way to explain it. But what is it for you about wrestling that just as a fan just draws you to it?
I think initially, when I found it again, it was 2009. So I'm like this awkward middle schooler at this point in time. And so I think at first it was really just an escape, because I was not a social butterfly. I was pretty much a loner. Like middle school days were pretty terrible for me, not
Hmm.
gonna lie. So when I found it, I guess it was just really an escape for me, because the people I had found were like Jeff Hardy was the original person who hooked me, and then Mickie James, and then DX and Shawn Michaels and like John Morrison. So there was a lot of like storylines that really drew me in. Like I've said this before, but I cringe on the Piggy James storyline. But for me, I related to it in a way where
Hmm.
I felt like I was Mickey. I could resonate with her. I empathized with her. But then I personally also had like DX, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H during their last run in WWE, which they had like DX Christmas commercials. They were doing stuff with Rey
Yes.
Mysterio and Straight Edge Society on SmackDown. And they were that comedic relief for me. And then I had like John Morrison, who was super high flying and that stuff. And like our Truth was super funny. So I think for me initially, it was definitely an escape where I felt like it transcended reality. Like I could relate to these characters because when I grew up, I thought it was real. You know, I
Yeah.
didn't know kayfabe was a thing. I hated CM Punk, Straight Edge Society, all of that. I didn't understand that that's not who they really were. So I like
You were the
fully
perfect
embodied.
fan. You were the
Yeah,
perfect
I
fan.
really was for like my first 2 years of as a wrestling fan, because I'm like 11, 12, 13
Yeah.
years old. I don't understand any of this. So yeah, initially I think I was definitely drawn in because I felt like I could relate to the characters, or it was an
Yeah.
escape for me. So I guess both initially, but nowadays, obviously, as I've grown older and now understand, I appreciate more of the art of it and like the psychology behind it. And again, it's still an escape for me, obviously, but I think as somebody who like used to do sports and stuff, I can kind of understand like that competitive nature or wanting to do something like physical and all that. Not anymore for me, honestly, but it's just like it's an art and I
It
can't
really
explain it
is.
now. I think it's still an escape for me, but I just have learned to appreciate it so much over the years. And like that would be my one constant that I would always go out of my way for in secret most of the time. Because, oh, like you said,
Oh.
most people, when you tell them, they're like, they go on this whole tangent. And so I just avoided that.
Oh.
But I think wrestling definitely is an escape, but I've also learned to appreciate it a lot more over time. Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh no, it definitely does, because I can relate to that as well. It definitely is still an escape for me. I know when I'm having my
Yeah.
down days and stuff like that, I'm like, let's just put on some wrestling, turn off my phone, just kind of, watch your favorite matches or your favorite segments or whatever it may be, and just kind of and zone out. But I do really relate to the fact that I've learnt to appreciate the art and the surroundings of just what happens
Yeah.
inside a wrestling ring, because I've been watching wrestling since about 2000, 2001, pretty much my whole life.
Mhm.
I got into it as a kid and just never grew out of it. I was, one of those people that never took a break. I never did anything. I've just always watched wrestling. It's pretty
I never
crazy.
took a break either. No, and
Yeah,
again, I'm sad that I didn't find it a bit sooner, but I also am grateful for when I found it because I
yeah,
don't think certain things would have happened nowadays.
yeah.
But like you said, I'm not one of those people that took a break ever from it. It was always wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes it created some conflict
Yep.
with my family
Oh
because
baby.
I
Yep.
put it as a priority when maybe it shouldn't have been, like with school and stuff. But
hmm
I totally relate.
Yeah, me too. Because everything airs obviously a little like weird times. Like live wrestling is on during the morning for me. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So school was like, I was like, hey dad, can I stay home from school today to watch this
Mhm.
pay-per-view? And dad would be like, yeah, whatever. Like, just stay out of my hair. Like, it's like, okay, cool. Like, so like growing up as a teenager, my parents divorced. So like I was living with my dad. I didn't have any of my siblings around me. So a lot of my time was spent in front of a television screen just because it's kind of like a weird social outlet almost because you're like, I don't have my siblings here to talk to. So I'm just going to kind of be on the screen and just kind of watch television. And I watched wrestling. That's how I kind of went with everything. So wrestling was kind of like a weird, I guess in a weird way, like a friend. I know that sounds really odd and like you may not everyone may get that, but wrestling was something that was just comfortable and it was just consistent within my teenage years. When you're a teenager and everything's going crazy and you're like, what the hell am I? Who the hell am I? Wrestling was just kind of always there. But it is crazy as we get older and we learn more about wrestling, we start to analyze a little bit more. It does take away
Mhm.
some of the fun of it. There's no
Yeah.
way of bubble wrapping that. There's always going to be some kind of element that you're like, I wish I didn't know this because it would be a lot more fun if I didn't. But you appreciate other aspects of what wrestling really is and everything that kind of goes into wrestling because, like you said, you've had probably many awkward conversations or tried to avoid those awkward conversations with people who don't understand it. And you're like, what is this? They're like, I don't get it. And like everything like that. So I do relate to that a lot because people will be like, it's fake, it's not this. And it's just like, I'm not even going to
Yeah.
bother to try to explain this to you because there's obviously no getting through to you. And there's obviously no way I'm going to be able to dissect this out to you. But there is no better feeling than having that friend that's never watch wrestling with you and they become a fan. That's like my
Mhm.
favorite thing to do is just show someone like who's got a blank canvas if they don't know what wrestling is and they fall in love with it. That's like so fun to me. Have you ever done that with someone? It's so fun.
Yeah, my college roommate like would only she knew of it kind of with like
Yeah.
Total Divas and stuff, but like then I got her to watch wrestling more and I actually took her to her first wrestling event which was NXT when they came here a few years ago during our senior year in senior year in college. Yeah, and so once she went there, she was kind of hooked more and she would watch it every week then with me cuz I would watch it in our dorm every week on our TV. And so she would watch it with me, or she would watch it on her own because there would be some days where I would have night classes, so I would have to miss, I think, SmackDown sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, she definitely has become more of a fan because of it. Initially because of Total Divas, but it was introducing her to that live event environment, I
Yeah.
think. And then we would watch like consistently every week. And then we would watch we also watched WrestleMania together
Oh,
when the Hardy Boys returned. That was
oh,
really fun. Oh
that would
my
have been
god, that was a
wild.
great time. I know, that was a great time. But yeah, I think that's really the only time where I mean, I've definitely dragged like I got my brother into it if that makes sense.
Hey, yeah.
And
I
like
got my
and
sister
and
into
he
it, so
yeah, so my brother definitely he's not obviously not as invested as I am, but like I introduced him shortly after I found it, and he like Rey Mysterio is like his favorite of all time because
yes.
during that time it was mostly the Mysterio versus like CM Punk,
Yeah.
like Undertaker and Batista and that stuff, and so he fell in love with Rey Mysterio and always been a big fan ever since. But I definitely my brother too.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to get someone you're like, I knew it. I
Yeah,
knew you'd like this, and it's just like, screw you, I got you. And it's like it's
yeah,
like the best feeling in the world. But you said it is really interesting that you bring up Total Divas in that aspect because I think a lot of people give a lot of like I don't know how to pronounce. I don't know how to like say
black.
this in a way. It's just like it's just that kind of like internet wrestling fan. I know that's us as well, but that typical like stereotype of that internet wrestling fan that's like, Total Divas is silly. It's like, but it was getting in a different audience, especially on a female demographic.
Hmm.
It was getting in an audience that WWE wasn't really, well, wrestling as a whole wasn't really, I guess, gearing their product to. I mean, it's probably different. I obviously can't speak for that, but you know, for you, what's it like for you to be in, especially when you came in, a very male dominated world? How do you find ways? Is it Total Divas and stuff that you can relate to more, that kind of you can see it pulling in a female audience or a different form of audience? Is that how you kind of place Total Divas and that kind of era of male dominated wrestling, I guess?
I think so because even there's been a few people I've interviewed who were introduced to professional wrestling mainly through Total Divas. Like they were watching it and
Yeah.
then they were watching a match because they saw something on Total Divas. So then they would watch like Monday Night Raw or SmackDown during that time. So I definitely think it brought in more females or more audience from that, or from like maybe a different demographic or different background
Yeah.
than your traditional wrestling fan, whatever. And so, I mean, I highly just enjoy reality shows in general. But so
Me
for
too.
me, it was so cool when you had that crossover with the divas from WWE, the women, and into a reality show. It created like a whole new element. Obviously, part of it's scripted, it's not total reality,
Yeah.
but it's cool to see them like outside of the ring in a different environment and get to know their stories and like chronologically where they started and how far they've come and everything that goes on in like their personal lives and stuff. It's cool to see them like outside of the ring in a new element. So I think, I mean, I really don't see people's argument that Total Divas like hindered anything. If anything, I mean, it's a reality show at the end of the day. Of course, there's gonna be drama and sometimes
Oh yeah.
scandal and
That's what
stuff.
I
I
live
mean,
for.
that's pretty much just good ratings and not again, sometimes we don't know what's scripted and what's actually real, you know?
Yeah.
So as a television standpoint, it was great television. Like I love Natalia, but Summer Rae slapping Natalia was one of the most or
Oh,
no, Natalia slapping Summer Rae was
yeah.
one of the most
So iconic.
iconic. No, was it Natalia slapping? No, was it
Summer
Natalia
slap
slapping
Natty, and then
Summer?
yeah,
Some,
Summer slap Natty because she
oh
broke her
yeah,
nose, and then that
yeah.
whole issue.
Oh yeah, get off my property. Yeah, that's like forever iconic. There's just so many great moments from there. But for me, no, I don't see Total Divas as hindering any of the audience. If anything, I think it definitely brought in new viewers. There's professional wrestlers out there today who I've spoken to, and I'm sure there's a plethora that I haven't. That Total Divas really was their gateway into the professional wrestling world.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about that, because obviously we were wrestling fans when Total Divas began, and it's
Yeah.
crazy to think that, hey, there's someone that hasn't watched wrestling that's now watching wrestling, or at least looking out for the Bellas or Eva Marie or whoever it
Mhm.
may be because of Total Divas. So it is kind of crazy to think of. I've never really understood, like, I've never really thought about that. I've understood it, but I've never really thought about it in that way, to be like, hey, I was just always watching wrestling, so this was just another,
Mhm.
show to add to my calendar of the
Yeah.
many different wrestling shows that I watch. So, this is always a question I like to get everyone's thoughts on, because it's so, like, there's just so many different opinions on it. What do you think of the term diva? Do you think it is a bad thing? Do you think it kind of represented the time? What's your kind of take on that word? Because so many people just hate it. People love it, but I don't really know where I sit sometimes.
I mean, I personally like it. I think that's definitely what I grew up as. And as Beyonce said, a diva is a female version of a hustler. And then you would always see the commercials saying, like, brave, smart, beautiful, sexy, powerful divas. And, you know,
Yeah.
that's what they were branded as. Obviously, I think people associate diva with a time in WWE where there was a lot of bra and panties matches. But
Hmm.
even after that, they evolved past that. And even like, the Bella twins even like I feel like identified strongly with the term diva, and then you had give divas a chance, and that's
Hmm.
pretty much what started the revolution and all that with Paige and
Yeah.
Emma, that whole match, and then they were trending. So for me, like I think diva is a more, obviously people think of that I think ruthless aggression era when you would get a lot of bra and panties matches, but they evolved, and then over time women got more opportunities to be more athletic in the ring. Like Kelly improved immensely over her career.
Hmm.
We got to see some incredible athleticism from her. Beth Phoenix was a diva. Karma was a diva as well. So you got to see over time more variety to what a diva was, from the ruthless aggression era to the PG era and now to today. So for me personally, I mean, I don't have a problem with the term diva. There's professional wrestlers today like Tonga from the UK calls herself the ultimate diva. Ashley Vega from the UK calls herself a diva as well, really resonates with that era with her style and in ring attitude. So many wrestlers today take parts from that era and identify and use that influence into their personas, their ring gear, and everything. So I think a lot of people have found that era influential. So for me personally, I don't
Me
have a
too.
problem with it.
I love that era because everything takes place and everything has its place in time to get to wherever
Yeah.
what the end destination is, whatever that is. But obviously, without all of that, we wouldn't be where we are now, where women are main eventing, and it's so normal now. Like I
Mhm.
love that it's I. Although it was such an exciting time to have first ever this, first ever that, I love
Mhm.
that it's just a part of stuff now.
Yeah.
It's so cool, like to be in this time where I always just resonated with that kind of era and like the Divas Championship gets a lot of flack as well, but it it represented a time. Like Mickie James was a Divas champion, Melina, Michelle McCool, Natalia, Beth Phoenix, they've all been Divas champions, and people look to their work so fondly, but then all of a sudden it's like, but it's that, so it's terrible. It's like I just don't really get that argument. You can't be on both sides of the coin there. If you hate it, you have to hate everything that's kind of
Yeah.
associated with it. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's a negative thing. It just represented a time. I'm obviously glad we're stepped away from it and we're in this zone of just like women and men should be treated equal. I mean, it should
Mhm.
always be like that, but unfortunately, the world just didn't didn't go like that, society, for some reason.
Yeah.
But um, I'm glad we're out of it, but I'm also very glad that it happened because I think very fondly of that time. To be completely honest with you, there was a lot of women in that era that I just resonated with, and I was like, "You're great." And I just feel like obviously I wanted
Mhm.
more time and more opportunity and everything
Yeah,
like
of
that to really
course.
show what they could do. But you could see it, like Michelle McCool. I don't think gets talked about enough is how athletic and how great she actually was.
Mhm.
Like she was so good. You watch some of her work back in like 2008, 2009, whatever. She is so crisp in the ring, and it's just like, oh man, imagine what you could do with 10, 15, 20 minutes of time and everything like that. So I think very fondly of that. But so you got into wrestling in 2009. You said you were like a little bit not much of a social butterfly. You kind of trying to stick to yourself in that kind of time period. Was television a big thing with you? What kind of TV shows, movies were you watching growing up? Were you like just addicted to something before wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, so growing up, again, it's kind of goes back to the whole reality TV show. This
Hmm.
is not something I talk about much on the wrestling community anyway, but I've been a Big Brother and Survivor fan for years.
Yes.
Like I've
Big
been
Brother. Oh
watching
my
Big
God. Yes.
Brother since 2005, since season
Damn.
6, and I believe Survivor since 2008 or 2009, shortly
Hmm.
before I found wrestling. It was season 18 I first started watching. So those were definitely shows and fandoms that I grew up in and still participate in. And then growing up too, I was huge into Disney and all of that. I think as a lot of people
Yes.
were with like Nickelodeon, like Zoe 101, Drake and
Oh,
Josh, like Hannah
oh,
Montana. Like those are the shows
oh,
I grew up with. I
yes.
think we're around the same age, Josh,
Yeah,
so you
we
can
are.
probably
Yeah.
relate to it. So
That's so
I mean,
Raven,
this,
Lizzie
yeah,
McGuire, the list goes on and on.
yeah. So I think everybody who's like a 90s or early 2000s kid probably can
Mhm.
relate to those Nickelodeon and Disney shows. But yeah, outside of like wrestling, it's definitely reality television like Survivor and Big Brother. I love. And then like Law and Order SVU has been huge
Oh.
for me for years. And then obviously like Disney and Nickelodeon growing up.
Yeah, I remember one of the first, I watched Big Brother a lot growing up. Obviously, like the Australian side of things, I
Yeah.
didn't, yeah, like, but still, same concept, same thing. But like watching that, and then I remember like, when you like get to that age where you're like, I'm not watching Disney and Nickelodeon now because I'm too cool and I'm too old for that. So you
Oh, I
find
still watch.
MTV. Oh, I
Yeah.
still watch it too, but I mean, like when
Yeah.
you're a teenager and you're like too cool for
Yeah.
this, and then you find
Hmm.
it again. But MTV, like Jersey Shore, I remember finding Jersey Shore and like losing my mind. I had that thing. I bought seasons 1 through 6 on iTunes,
Yeah.
and then I just would loop it. Like I'd watch 1 through 6 and then just start again, and just keep on watching over and over again. I don't know what it was about Jersey Shore that just hit me. But I fell in love with that show. Like season 2 through 4, like the years when they're in Miami, they went back to the Shore House and then Italy.
Mhm.
I like peak Jersey Shore, like the note, everything like that. It's just trash, but I love it to bits. Like, so obviously by the reaction, you were a Jersey Shore person.
Yeah, I was. I believe it started when I was in middle school, and like technically I shouldn't have been watching it, but I learned some swear words from it. Ironically, thank you, Snooki. But no, I remember watching that, and then I remember Angelina being on TNA like the year after she left.
Yes,
And then
yes.
Snooki was at WrestleMania, and like it was weird but cool to see them transition to that. And then obviously you have everything going on with Sammy and Ronnie,
Oh,
and then that one time between Vinny and Snooki. Yeah, you're bringing me back. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I watched it way too often when I definitely should have been. But
oh,
MTV was like huge for me. Like I would watch Awkward. Oh, I love that
oh my
show.
God.
And then Made. Oh my God, Made. They have on Paramount Plus, and I've been binge watching it. I miss that. And then like VH1, I used to watch all the time too, like the top
Oh, me
20
too.
countdown. You're bringing me
Oh,
back.
do you remember pop-up video?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I
Hello?
totally
That was
forgot
like the
about that.
best thing
Yeah.
ever, and it would be like, bloop, and it would
Uh,
be like, bloop,
mhm,
and you're like, yes, what is, I just love
yeah.
this. It's like, those are the shows, like, I remember finding, like, when I first watched Catfish, years
Yeah.
ago now, I,
Yeah.
like, was like, what is this? Like, I obviously knew what the
Mhm.
term was, but I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
I knew, for some reason,
Mhm.
I must have been living under a rock at the time, and I just never had heard of it. And I just remember finding it and being like, this is awesome. And then you'd binge that,
Yeah.
because I'm a binge
Mhm.
TV. I'm not much of a movie buff. I won't really say I'm much of a movie buff, but
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
TV shows is what I kind of go with, and I can just like binge like everything.
Mhm.
Like my Netflix like thing at the moment is like The Office and everything like that, because I'm just
Mhm.
like, I just want to sit here and watch this all day and do
Mhm.
nothing else. That's my life at the moment, is eating a lot of potato chips and just watching The Office. But I mean, hey, whatever we got to do to get through this world at the moment.
Mhm.
Australia is in a mess at the time of recording. It's in a
Mhm.
mess, so I'm just trying to keep myself sane.
Mhm.
So yeah, like that's really what I resonated with, those like Jersey Shore. I got into Geordie Shore a little bit, like the UK version, not as much
Mhm.
as Jersey Shore, but all of those shows were just so. Again, I don't even know how to explain why I like them. They're just like a car wreck. You know, you want to
Yeah.
look away, but also like you want
It's
to
reality
watch.
television again. At the end of the day,
It's
we're
just
seeing a theme here pretty much.
mm-hmm. I think we can click on that. Music. Is music a big part of you? Like, I think for everybody, I think it's like you can't trust anyone that doesn't like say they vibe with
Mhm.
music too much, because I'm very into music, like all different genres, and I go through different eras, and I just like to really like deep dive into music. It's probably the biggest thing outside of wrestling that I like to
Mhm.
kind of analyze. I'm like, why do I like this, and who's this, and
Mhm.
discovering new stuff. Growing up now, whatever you want to kind of talk about with music, what's kind of in your playlist at the moment? Because I like to,
Oh
I love to talk
gosh.
about music.
Honestly, a lot of throwback music. Honestly, I feel like I live from like 2008 to 2012 or 13 music, because like right now in my on repeat playlist is like Crush by David Archuleta.
Yes.
I have some Hannah Montana songs in
Yes.
there, some Chris Brown. Honestly, like I don't listen to the radio as often. Like it's strange. I listen to the radio every morning just to my one station just to get the news and the segments that they do, so I
Mhm.
don't know all of the newest songs, whatever, besides like Olivia Rodrigo and stuff. So a lot of my music now is old. I feel like now I'm that old person
Me too.
that
Don't
that
worry.
you
Me
know
too. That's me.
I don't know half the songs anymore. But no, I honestly live from like 2008 to like 2013 with my playlist. Like honestly,
It's a
like
good time.
I know that I'm gonna yeah. So like right now, oh my gosh. Like 2 of my top 3 songs are literally from like 10 years ago.
I love it.
One is Champion by Chris Brown, which I
Oh,
believe was one of the Tough Enough,
tough enough.
theme
Yes.
songs. And
Yes.
then Hall of Fame by The Script is 3rd, and that came out 10 years ago. And then like I said, Crush by David Archuleta is on there. And so like I have a lot of old songs to
I no,
my on
trust me,
repeat playlist
I
alone.
live in that, I live in that kind of era as well, even before. But obviously, I think everyone knows that I love Paramore. That's always going to be kind of what
Mhm,
I go back to. It's just my true love of music is Paramore. But I just think Hayley Williams is like an angel that's fallen from the heavens.
mhm,
I'm like, why are you just glowing everywhere
mhm,
that you go? But like you said, I listen to a lot of that kind of like, almost that kind of fits into just like, it's just like generic pop. I mean that in a good way, but it's just like that's what that time and that's what those
yeah,
years sounded like I
mhm,
listen to a lot of that kind of stuff. A lot of people are like, okay, like we've listened to this song like 20 years ago when it was cool, but now what are you doing? Listen to it. I'm like, it's still good. If it's not on TikTok anymore, I really don't know what the music is, because
Oh
like
gosh,
TikTok
yeah,
music is just everywhere. But and Olivia Rodrigo, because she's that
she's
like in
amazing.
thing. She's that in thing
Yeah,
at the moment, isn't she? Like we
yeah,
always have those times of like, well, it was Billie
hmm
Eilish a couple of years ago, and
yeah,
Cardi B and all of this and stuff.
hmm
But she is just kind of exploded onto the scene. It is kind of crazy to watch, because I remember the only thing that I always go back to this person, because I just think it's a really easy like counter argument and just an easy way to describe how I feel with Olivia Rodrigo and her like presence. Is Lady Gaga burst onto the scene in like 2008 or 9. Gaga's a queen. Well, and she just
hmm
like, remember when she came out and everyone was just like, holy crap, it's Lady Gaga. And like I just remember, as like a closeted gay boy, I was just like,
hmm
oh man, I love Lady Gaga. She's just like, be
yeah.
yourself, all this kind of stuff. So she was perfect for everything that I loved. My cat is attacking me. That's why I've
I
got my arm down
remember
here.
watching Lady Gaga again on VH1's Top 20 Countdown,
Hmm.
because that's when I started watching, was like 2008, 2009. I remember her being Poker Face was number one on the
Oh, what a song.
2009 like top 50 songs of the year for VH1. I remember when that came out, when Just Dance premiered on then. So yeah,
Mm.
definitely like that era. Like Katy Perry is my favorite female artist of all
Ooh,
time.
Katie. You're Katie Cat.
And yeah, so and I remember again, like when I Kissed a Girl first came out, I feel like a lot of my favorite artists are people who really exploded around that time, because like The Script is my favorite band.
Kesha, were you a Kesha person?
Oh, yes,
I
yes,
love
I
Kesha.
was. I fell off for a little bit, but she kind of did too, because with personal issues. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, TikTok was always playing.
Oh,
When I was
what a
in
song.
middle school on car rides in the morning, yeah.
I love that era of music, because it's just people don't. I don't know what it is about. I think it's not enough time has almost passed where people are like looking back on it in a sense. It's like still, it's not fresh, but it's like it's that in between era. But I love that. That's what I grew up with. That was high school. That
Yeah.
was Kesha and Rihanna and Katy Perry and Lady Gaga. Those were the people that were just
Mhm.
kind of exploding. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure a car ride with you and me in it would be a lot of fun, because we'd
Oh
just be
my god,
listening to them. We'd be like,
yes.
let's just combine
I
playlists here.
I listen to so many like throwback playlists,
Hmm.
but I like to mix it up every once in a while. But honestly, a lot of my music is older that I listen to. I do like occasionally finding newer songs, but
Yeah.
a lot of it is old. Not gonna lie.
Music is so, it's just I don't can't really think of too many situations which isn't improved by music. I'm just like, let's
Hmm
put music on. It's just gonna make this
hmm
situation so much
Yeah.
better.
hmm
I couldn't imagine getting into a car and someone's like, I don't want to listen to music. I'd be like,
Like you just be
what are you
staring at. I
doing?
mean, I guess if there's scenery around you, but if you're like in the middle of a city, like and there's no scenery, like what are you going to do? You
Just
know.
well, I'm not interested in that
I mean,
car
you have
ride.
podcasts too, but I
True.
mean, music though. But music is
Yeah,
the life.
it's interesting. Podcasting, perfect segue into what you
You're
do.
welcome.
You're a professional. I can tell you're very good at this. I think you might have a future in this. Like you said that your show has been nearly 2 years. Am I reading? Did I hear that properly?
Two years coming up in the mid July. So 2 years coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah.
How does that, when you look back to where you began and where you are now, do you kind of look back and obviously everybody goes, oh, I was so terrible when I first started. And it's like, whatever. But do you kind of look back fondly on those earlier shows and be like, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into with all this? Because you, like you listed off in at the beginning of this, is that you've done a lot of things, and being able to work with Gore is like, I mean, what a dream, like just being able to do that. But that would have all not happened if it wasn't for your podcast, I would say. Like it all just spiraled.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because like I said, like if I didn't like I said too, like if I didn't find professional wrestling when I did, I don't know if the stars would have aligned with how they have, at least with Gaw and Mickey and all of that. It's
Yeah.
just absolutely mind-boggling to me. But going back to like talking about me, like starting my podcast coming up on 2 years, it's absolutely insane. Again, I am not somebody that has a particular background in broadcasting. I put off my public speaking course till my very last semester because I hated it.
There you
I
go.
took a few communication courses and journalism courses in college, but again, my degree's in psychology and my minor's in creative writing. So, I mean, I have a little bit, but again, I don't have a degree or really an extensive background in any of that. So, a lot of it was self-taught or YouTube or
Mhm.
WikiHow and learning how to edit stuff, learning what equipment I should be using, testing everything out. It took me a solid 3 weeks to get my microphone, learn how to edit, feel comfortable with research. And like, luckily enough, I had my friend Samira who had been doing interviews before. And I was like, can you just help me test this out? And
Yep.
so we were on Skype for like 2 hours recording that we only ended up using 12 minutes of. But looking back, it's cool to see how far I've come, and I don't know if I I unenrolled from graduate school so I could basically pursue this. Didn't I was This just started off as a hobby really, and now it's become like a real dream and something that I'm like actively continuing and striving for, and it's just crazy to see and know how far I've come in 2 years because I didn't know anything. I was just honestly doing this for fun, and interviews were not something that I was going to particularly hone in on. But like after my first one with one of my good friends, Kelly Klein, and then Alicia too, was somebody who I looked up to too, and like Chris Van Fleet, like it was just like, oh, I was like, I like connecting with people. Maybe that's the psychology degree in
Mhm.
me coming out, but it's absolutely wild how the stars have kind of aligned in the last 2 years and how far I've come. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I started about 3 years ago. I'm coming up to
Mhm.
3 years next month, actually, so it's a little crazy that we're in, like, the same, like, time space. I just
Mhm.
started with a
Mhm.
podcast, and then it just kinda spiraled into
Yeah,
other things, and I would love to do content creation on a I would love a dream of mine is to do this for a job. Like, I would like
of
to create an
course.
income and do this. It's just like, I've never found something that I've been more it's hard work, and I'm not saying it's easy, it's not easy at all, but it's never found something that seems so easy just because you're so passionate and you love it so much, so you can
Mhm.
kind of put all your energy into it. It's crazy what your body and your mind can do if you have something that you're so passionate and your
Mhm.
energy can just be used for that. It's so cool, and like transitioning into what I'm kind of doing now, which is video work and streaming and everything like that. I love doing that. And it's just something that I'm like, it doesn't feel like I have to do work almost. It's like I'm putting in all
Mhm.
this time for something that I can look at the end of the day and go, wow, I did that all myself. And, but like you said, like trying to figure out equipment and stuff is so hard when you have no clue what you're doing. I used a Guitar Hero mic for my first ever, like, maybe 5 or 6 podcasts. I used a
Mhm.
Guitar Hero mic. I'm like, "This will work for a little while. Sure. Okay, this will kind of," and just kind of self-teaching
Yeah.
is it's interesting, isn't it? YouTube is a great tool to
Yeah,
use.
thank God for YouTube and WikiHow.
Mhm.
Honest to God, that's
Mhm.
how I did everything, like how to edit stuff because I didn't know how to do what equipment, what you can record over, and like getting it took at least 3 weeks of preparation and editing and
Mhm.
everything before I actually put out my first episode and all of that.
It's always like such a shitstorm when you're like trying to learn. You're like, what? I thought because everyone just thinks, oh, I'll just plug in a microphone and I'll be
No,
good to go. It's like,
no.
not how it works at all. You've got to learn how to use equipment. You've got to learn how to use
Mhm.
software. Like, I'm
Mhm.
pretty tech savvy, but I'm not like, advanced expert
Oh,
in tech stuff.
yeah.
And I'm like, how do I use this program? Like, this is so
Mhm.
daunting. And like,
Mhm.
then trying to realize, like, how do you connect with people? How do you become like I hate this word because it sounds so cocky, but how do you become a presence on this to kind of get your stuff everywhere? And
Yeah.
it just happens over time. It takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen overnight. I mean, in a sense, it doesn't happen overnight. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting experience, but I wouldn't trade it in for anything. I love the fact that I'm able to talk to people like yourself who's on the other side of the world, and we've never spoke before this. Like, we've obviously DM'd and chatted on
Yeah.
Twitter, but we've never spoke before this, and it's so
Mhm.
I don't know, there's something I don't find difficult in talking to people that I've never talked to before, because you
Mhm.
just relate in so many areas. We both love wrestling. That's like the number one thing. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to be able to talk to you about something because we both enjoy professional wrestling, but just relating to different things, whether it's interviewing or whether it's just content creation, I just find it so fascinating to learn about people. So it's really cool to kind of, do this and be involved in this kind of stuff, because I mean, again, it's not easy to do, and I would really like to expand more into it. And I know you with we brought up Gore and stuff like that. How did that happen? How did you get involved with Mickie James and everything like that? Because it's obviously not something that everyone can just be like, "Huh, yeah, you know what? Casual little thing here." Like I speak to Mickey and like I do the you obviously you edit the podcast for the Gorecast.
Yeah.
I watch
Mhm.
I watch Grown Ass Women every single week since the very first episode. It is such
Mhm.
a fun show, and like Val and Lisa and Mickey just have this
Mhm.
natural chemistry obviously between them. But how did this all start for you? Because I know you probably told this story before, but please let me just hear it because I'm just so fascinated by it.
Again, like just goes back to basically finding wrestling when I did like I said at the beginning, Mickie James was literally my first introduction to women's wrestling, and so she has become my favorite woman basically of all time, honestly. And so I obviously followed her career, and like we met a few times finally. Like we had met like maybe 4 or 5 times at wrestling events or her concerts and stuff before that, and so we had kind of built this rapport with each other for a couple years. I would say like it started in 2017 was the first time I met her in person. So I think that's where it really evolved from there. And then obviously Goss started up and Mickey knew who I was. Val and Lisa had no idea who I was. Now like Lisa's one of my best friends. It's literally wild. Um and so they obviously created Gaw. Mickey was following me like on all my social media accounts. She was familiar with me, and then I obviously was in the chat room every week. Mickey knew that I did my own podcast. She had been a guest on my podcast last year, literally. And the thing is, this is off topic, but when I recorded my podcast with her, she did say the week before, because this is I re-recorded the week before she returned to Raw at the time,
Okay.
and she did tell me she was going to Florida, which didn't click in my brain that she would be back the next week. But I digress. Moving on. But and so Mickey knew that I had a podcast, and I was obviously very involved with Gone. Kind of had built a rapport with them every week, and so Mickey basically one day asked me, slid in those Instagram DMs, I guess, as people like to say, and she has honestly been so generous and so like giving to me, and I'm so incredibly grateful for her, and she's given me opportunities when she didn't need to because she's in a position where she could be better off, you know. There's a lot of other amazing great people out there, but I guess she saw something in me that I didn't see. And so initially she basically just asked me, she wanted to work with me on something. She's like, listen, I want to do something with you that can benefit us both. And she was looking for some help with like her social medias and stuff, but we couldn't really find anything that would like align with both of us. So then she suggested like Gaw is looking to do a podcast, Gawcast, whatever. Like, would you be interested in helping us launch it? She's like, I know you do your own podcast, a wrestling gal, and you're familiar with it. I was like, oh my God, I love that idea. Those are my
Yes.
exact words. And
Where do I
as I
sign?
mentioned, yeah, yeah, pretty much. And so I was like, yes, like absolutely 1,000,000%. We just have to get Lisa and Val on board. And so this is like mid-November at this time. And so it took us a while to coordinate everything because at that time Gaw had maybe like 30 episodes out. So I had to backlog a lot of the episodes, and they still are not all up on there, but we're now updated now with every week that I put out the newest episode, like the night of or the day after. But it took weeks to coordinate, and like we were all in a group chat now on Voxer. I can't believe they got hooked me on this walkie-talkie app called Voxer, but I'm just used to audio messages. But no, Mickey basically they were looking for somebody to launch their podcast, and Mickey knew I did my own, and that's basically where it evolved from there. And then I became good friends with Lisa and Val along the way, and then leading up, we had obviously, I was like, we got to do an intro, an outro. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that went down to make this happen, like making Anchor and all of that platform and like promoting it. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, Mickey basically presented me with the opportunity, and I was not going to say no, you
It'd be
know?
silly to say no. If you were telling me this story and you were like, Mickey presented this opportunity to produce like the Gorecast and everything, and I just turned it down, I'd be like, listen
No.
here, you're a nice person, but what are you doing?
Again, it's still wild because how many people get to say that they basically work with their hero, and now we're
Yeah.
friends. She called us friends the other day for the first time ever
Oh!
publicly, and don't tell her I said this, but I was like, "Oh my god."
Mickey, if you're
Like
listening.
I was like, "Oh my god, no." I was just texting her earlier today and yesterday. It's just wild again how far everything has evolved, and now like Gawcast is like a regular thing now, and now I get to be a part of like their after party shows where it's just
Yeah.
them on Zoom. It's just them and me, and then everybody else is like muted and their videos are off. And now like I'm officially a part of Team Gaw, and it's still very, very surreal.
No,
Not
I
gonna
love
lie.
I love
It's
seeing people.
crazy.
It makes me so happy to see people just thriving and doing cool things because I mean, I've listened to your show for a little while now and just been like a fan, like just been like, this is
Mhm,
so cool. And then obviously we started interacting on Twitter and everything it may be on there. And
mhm.
then I didn't even know the first instance I came across you on Twitter or whatever it may be, or when we first started interacting, I should say. But it just kind of happened that way. But it's just cool seeing like good people doing good things because I think it's a really cool thing. And I don't see you see this so negative like it can be negative on Twitter. Let's just be completely call a spade a spade. It can be a pretty crappy place at times,
Mhm.
but I'm pros and cons. I'm grateful for the people that are on there and all the people that I've been able to chat with and build friendships with because I think it's really that's what I'll when this is all said and done, it's like okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I think that's what I'll look back the most fondly over is like I got to speak with people all over the world and just bond over wrestling. It's pretty wild to say that, isn't it?
It's crazy. I honestly don't know if I would have met half the people, and, like, I've told her this, but I really firmly believe that, like, obviously, I had my podcast and stuff, but
Mhm.
at that time, I wasn't, like, a huge name, and still I'm not. I'm still working towards stuff, but I think it was really after that where people maybe started paying more attention because they again, Lisa, Val, and Mickey have their own amazing platforms that they have built themselves, and they have their own following, and they basically went out of their way for me when they absolutely did not have to, but I guess they saw something in me, or I honestly don't have the answer to that, but I really think that that opportunity I told Mickey this, I really think that she, like and I wanna get emotional, but I really think that she, like, changed my life, and, like, I told her that I don't know if I'd be getting half the opportunities today. Obviously, I had my podcast, but I really think it was the GAW relationship that really accelerated things for me, and again, if it wasn't for her, I don't know where I would be, and honestly, I truthfully believe that she immensely impacted and perhaps changed my life, honestly.
Oh, that makes my heart so happy to hear that. And it's just like, I just hope you continue to thrive and continue to grow because I just want to see that for people that, deserve that and have earned that more so than anything. I
Mhm.
think deserve is a word we use a lot, but I think earned is the better word to use because people put a lot of work into the stuff they do. Yes, okay, we are doing it at the end of the day for fun. It has always got to be fun at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But working towards bigger things and I've always had that aspiration. A lot of people will look at you pretty down at that idea of being like, "You listen, you're never going to be able to do it." I'm like, "Yeah, with an attitude like that, you probably won't be able to either." So I just kind of look at it as like everything that I do is working towards what I want. And I can tell you're kind of the same way. It's just it's fun, but also like I want more out of this and I'm willing to put in the effort and the
And
work.
it's
So
gotta be sustainable too, yeah.
mhm. Mhm. Definitely, and I think, like, the best way I can describe content creation for people that actually wanna grow and for people that it takes time, don't think that you're just gonna be like, "I'm gonna do 1 podcast episode or 1 stream, and then all of a sudden, I have all of these
No,
people listening to me." That's not how it
no.
works. You have to put in the hard yards, especially at the start. Like, that first year of what I was doing, I'm like, barely anyone's paying attention to what I'm doing, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And he's got to basically be okay with an audience of 0, an audience of 1, an audience of 2, because you have to put in that work to kind of get noticed. And then you meet people and whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden you build a small little following. But it takes time, it takes effort, and you've got to be willing to be consistent. I think consistency is probably the best thing is like, you have to be consistent with the stuff you're doing because it
I
just doesn't.
certainly was not consistent in my first my first, like, 8 months, I was not consistent at all, like, the first 10 episodes took 6 months because I would take, like, a month or a few weeks in between each of them, and obviously now it's way more consistent, but it's getting in those repetitions, and like you
Mhm.
said, it's not just as I've told somebody who's asked me before, like, you can't run until you walk first. You have
Mhm.
like you said, not everything is going to be overnight. It took me 10 months just to get 1,000 listens, and then
Mhm.
a year later I got 10,000. So that 10 times in a year, it takes time,
Yeah.
over time. I mean, unless you're somebody with already a big following, like if The
Yeah.
Rock were to ever have his own podcast, obviously people would pay attention to it. But again, it's because he built that empire and built that following otherwise that people's would pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. It all takes time, and just be willing to be aware of that. You're not going to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I've done it, so here I am. It's like, okay, just put in your effort now, and you'll be able to do stuff. Because it's like, it's pretty cool to think. At least in my kind of thing with, obviously I'm not doing a consistent podcast anymore, but I'm doing other things. But even the stuff
Mhm.
I do for Love Wrestling, like to see like some of my earlier work on there, and transferring into like the legacy of stuff I do, and to see
Mhm.
people actually wanting to see that and being like, "Hey, I like this series." It's like, that's so like that hits me. I'm just like, "Thank you. I put effort into this, and it's so cool to see people liking what you're producing." And I'm sure it's the same for you with the stuff that you
Yeah.
do. When someone says to you, "Oh, I'm looking forward to that." It's like, "Thank you. I
Makes me
appreciate that."
yeah, I'm an emo person inside out. That pleading eye emoji is literally me in person. It's like, you
It's
know,
like, and
it's
I'm like, me,
yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I'm very much like that. So it's just really, it's just a cool space. I'm so glad that um I'm able to kind of do this kind of stuff, and people are interested in watching my streams, or
Mhm.
whatever it may be that I'm doing. It's like people are like, "Oh, I'll be there." It's like, "Thank you. I appreciate that." Like, I'm having a lot of fun doing this. So it's really cool. And I'm again, I'm so happy for you, and I hope, I just wish the best for you. Continued success all around, because you just seem like a stand-up person, and just someone that is very inspiring too, to someone that, isn't a big, by any stretch of the words, I'm not a big content creator, but I've built a little small following, and I want to continue to build. And to see someone like you doing that, it's cool. So you're someone I look at and be like, I want to be where Ella is. I want to continue to get better. So, just a round of applause to you. I'll pat you
Insert
back.
pleading eye emoji here. Honestly though, but yeah, that means a lot, honestly. And again, it's wild at the people you meet and you come across, because I think me and you really connected because of Spencer and Love
Mhm.
Wrestling and all of that. And I met Spencer, I think, because of Warren and Kristen from Bell to Bells, and
Yep.
like the whole process, the whole train like
Yeah.
leads on, like going back. And it's crazy the people that you meet and the content that you are exposed to every day in this wrestling community, and it just keeps building off of itself.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that, like that cycle, that train. It's just like,
Yeah.
who's on this train now? It's like, oh my god, all these
Yeah.
people, and it's
Who am I gonna
overwhelming.
meet
But it's
next? Yeah, yeah.
I love running into new people and just being able to connect, because it's just, again, that's probably the stuff I enjoy the most, is just having conversations like this, and just being able to pick people's brains and just shoot the shit for a little while, because it is fun. And again, I think it's, maybe we're in that pandemic world life again, but that social aspect of life is kind of, is coming back. Let's call a spade, but we were taken away from it for so long, where we were used to just kind of talking to ourselves.
Mhm.
So I think like doing this is like a good, like, little social way of being like, I'm in my house, I'm in my comfort zone, but I'm also able to talk to people on the complete opposite side of the world, mind you, because there's a lot more people on that side of the world than in this side of the world doing this
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So obviously I'm talking to people that are primarily from the States, but people from the UK and people from Canada and stuff like that. So it's really cool to be able to connect. But I won't keep you here for too much longer. I just want to like
No,
do a
we can
little.
go we can keep going as long as you want, Josh, honestly.
That's the spirit. See, that's what I kind of I like, is when people are like, let's just keep talking, because I'm happy to talk for a little bit longer. But little lighthearted game. It's like standard cliche podcast stuff, but let's do it
Okay.
anyway. Little this or that. I'll give you two things. You can kind of pick one.
Okay.
I'll keep it wrestling for the most part, but we'll be able to spice it up a little bit. But let's see. So you started, let's just, so I can get in the grasp of this game. You started watching wrestling in 2009, but I'm assuming you've watched wrestling, of course, from earlier years and gone back and kind of dived in a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay,
I
good.
know what you're going to ask. I'm
Oh,
all 99% sure I know what you're going to ask.
I don't think maybe later I'll ask the one that you may be thinking of, but
Okay.
let's start with this. Let's start with this: the Divas Championship or the Women's Championship from like the Ruthless Aggression era. Which one would you choose?
hmm I think just because like Mickey is obviously like a five-time
Lifetime,
women's
yeah.
champion. I guess I would say women's championship because that's what I primarily was introduced to initially, but I do appreciate the Divas championship as well. But I have a good nostalgic feel for the women's championship.
Okay, the Bella Twins or Lay Cool?
Oh gosh. See, if you would have asked me this 10 years ago, I might have had a different answer because Lay Cool was the heels when I first started
Mm-hmm.
watching. But I'm going to say Lay Cool because, again, they played that Mean Girls dynamic so well. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
Michelle McCool is so underrated and so is Layla. Like they worked so well
Yes.
together. And then
Yes.
I. I mean, going back, it's like it's sad like how it ended, but I'm glad Michelle ended her career against Layla, who she had worked with. So I
Yes.
guess I think I would say like cool.
TLC matches or Hell in a Cells?
Oh gosh. TLC, like ladders, Jeff Hardy. I mean TLC.
Okay, yeah. I was like thinking in my head as soon as I asked that, I'm like Jeff Hardy. She's
But I
gonna say
but I mean
TLC.
but I mean Sean has amazing Hell in a Cell matches too though. But again, growing up, TLC.
TLC. I'd probably be the same as you as well. Don't worry. All right, we'll do something a little different. Favorite face of Foley: Cactus, Dude Love, or Mankind? Because I'm a Mick Foley guy through and through. I think Mick Foley is one of just like the kindest people in the world.
I think I would say Mankind.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I think Mankind had the most iconic moments, but I still love the Royal Rumble '99 where he came out
yes.
3
But
times. That
and
was
he got
amazing.
eliminated all 3 times. He still
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
win. Poor guy. I was like, oh no. I mean, this is a standard one, but it's always one to ask: Stone Cold or The Rock?
See, I don't know because again, I started watching after and I haven't seen everything. Today, I would say like The Rock is amazing, but I think going back, I would say Stone Cold.
Yeah, see, I was probably a kid that liked The Rock better as a kid, and then as I grew older, I'm like, okay, I think I vibe with Austin maybe a little bit more, just because I understand it a little bit more. I don't know.
Okay.
That's just me, but I don't know why. But I think it was because
If
my older
it's
brother
today,
liked
yeah.
Stone Cold.
Oh,
Like I
maybe.
think, and then I was just trying to be the opposite. So I was like, I like
Mhm.
Rock because you like Stone Cold. And then as I got older, I'm like, okay, I like Stone Cold.
Mhm.
But both great, both very pivotal in like the progression of wrestling, I guess you could say. I don't really know how to really describe that very well, but Rock is obviously is he the biggest celebrity in the world now? I don't even know if that's is.
I think so,
I think he's
honestly.
probably is, which is great. I still think of him as a wrestler. I'm like, he's a
Yeah.
wrestler. Like, no, stop taking him away. But obviously, he's done fairly well for himself. I think it's pretty safe to say.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's done it
just
pretty well.
Edge or Christian.
Oh gosh. Edge is my top 5 of all time. I have to say Edge. However, like Christian is incredible too as well and they both have amazing theme songs, but just slightly Edge. I got to give him the upper hand.
All right, here's something. Here's something to it. The Divas Revolution was a thing. Do you remember the 3 teams? We had PCB, we had Team Bella, we had
Yes.
Team Bad. Which
Yes.
side were you on?
Oh, PCB all the way.
Oh, I was
Page,
I'm
yeah.
Team Bad all
Page
the
at
way.
oh, okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Page at that time was like my top favorite, and so I was always rooting for Page no matter what. So
Do you
I
want to
was
see Paige
PCB.
wrestle again?
I do, but at the same time, I want her to be in a safe environment and I never want her or anybody to compromise themselves. But again, we've seen miracles happen like
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Bryan and Edge. So as long as she is safe and healthy and there's no risk or very weary, very a low chance of it, then yes. But again, I'm more concerned about her health above anything
Me
else.
too. Me too. Obviously, selfishly as a wrestling fan, I'd be like, yes, let's put Paige in there. But again, I don't want anyone to put themselves at risk just for a pop or just for because
Yeah.
if it's safety first. But you mentioned Edge. You mentioned Edge is in your top 5. Did you just lose your damn mind when that music hit at Royal Rumble 2020?
I did.
I
I
cried.
cried.
Yeah, me
I
too.
literally cried. I was like, and there's not many moments in wrestling where I'm literally like, holy shit, you know,
Mhm.
sorry if I don't know if I can
No,
swear in here, but
swear all
I
you want.
literally was like, holy shit. Like there's less than 10 times in wrestling where I've gone, oh my God, or holy shit. That
Mhm.
was one of them.
Yeah, it's like, you know those moments in wrestling that you'll never forget where you were? That's
Mhm.
one of those moments. It's like,
Yeah.
I remember being like, I remember it was like, because obviously we're in different parts of the world, so it
Yeah.
was hot as all hell. It was middle of summer
Mhm.
here, and I remember
Mhm.
sitting with my sister and her fiance, and we're like, because, you know, the rumblings were kind of present, like, is
Yeah.
Edge gonna, surely Edge is not gonna be there, like, no, and
Mhm.
then number 21, I believe he was, and I just remember that 5 seconds, and that music hit, and I mean, I just was so emotional. I'm not a big crier.
I'm emotional thinking about it.
I'm not a big crier. I don't cry at much except wrestling. I
Yeah.
always cry at wrestling.
Yeah, same. Like
So I just
the last
remember where
time,
that
yeah.
was.
Yeah, I was sitting here on my couch at home. I had my HDMI cable hooked up to my TV, and then 21 hits. Edge's music hits. Edge runs into the ring, hits Ziggler with a spear, and then Carl Anderson, I believe.
Yep.
And then I just froze.
Yeah.
I was like, no way. Honestly, honest to God, though, it's crazy that literally all five of my top favorite people of all time have all returned to WWE, and I got to see them again on TV. It's absolutely wild after they
It
left
is
and came back.
it's cool, like, to I love that reaction that you're giving, is
Yeah,
because it's just like wrestling does this weird thing that there's nothing else in the world that I react to like wrestling. There's
yeah.
nothing better than feeling like a kid. I think that's what we all strive for in anything. It's like, how do we feel like we're 10 years old again
Mhm.
doing whatever? I think like a lot of those times, like Kofi, I look at is just something that Kofi Mania, or whatever you want to tagline it
Yeah.
as, when he won the title from Bryan at WrestleMania 35, I just, those are the moments where you just don't think about all the ands, ifs, or buts, and all,
Mhm.
reading all the dirt sheets and everything that we do.
Yeah.
I don't think about that. It was just like, I just feel like I'm a kid, like, reacting to something, and like Kofi made me so, obviously the Iconics for different reasons winning at that
Mhm.
Mania. Um, I've never in my life me and my brother are just not like huggy. We don't hug,
Mhm.
but I hugged my brother. I'm like, oh my God,
Aw.
the Iconics. That's my
Yeah.
favorite moment in wrestling ever, just because
Mhm.
it's Australia and you feel very proud, but just, I love Jess and Cassie. I just think they're very funny, talented human
Yeah.
beings. I hope they do something. We're coming up on the 90 days. Like, it's getting close. I hope I get to see them soon. So that was always a great moment. But you're always just searching for that moment where you feel like a kid. I see your reaction to Kofi. Obviously, that made you feel like that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. I said 5, but I realize now that, like, 6 of my favorite people of all time, like, Shawn came back for a match. We won't talk about the actual outcome of that match
Ooh.
from Saudi Arabia. Mickey came back.
Yeah.
Jeff Hardy came back. Kurt Angle came back. Edge came back. John Morrison came back. So, honestly, my childhood,
Okay.
all of
All
them
right.
came
You're like some
back.
kind of magician here. Like,
I
what's going
know.
on?
That's what I'm saying. MVP is back. It's wild that like my favorite people of all time have all come back, and I've gotten to see them all except for Edge, which I'm praying that it happens once
Fingers
they're
crossed.
back here for live events. He is the only one that I have not gotten to see live in some capacity, and so I'm praying.
Is there Loop in New York at any time soon?
Not in Buffalo, no. The closest
Okay.
one is like Pittsburgh and Cleveland that are like three and
Okay.
a half hours away. I can wait. I have an indie show coming up. I got NWA and then I have AEW. So
You're
I can
good. You're
wait a little
sorted.
bit for
You can.
WWE. I
Alright.
mean,
Alright.
just hope. I want Edge so badly. He's like the
It's
only
at
one
that
that
bucket
like I
list.
haven't. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty wild when how do you feel about shows? How do you feel about the current world of wrestling? We really haven't talked about that all that much, but how do you feel about everything going on? We are in a little bit of a, I know AEW just come back to live fans and everything like that, but we are in this little bit of a transitional time when we're just kind of
Mhm.
waiting. I think there's been a lot of stalling that's happening across a lot of companies. It's just like, we're saving this for fans. We're saving this for fans.
Mhm.
When you look back over this era of no crowds, small crowds, Thunderdome, whatever you want to look at it from, whatever company, do you look back at it fondly, or do you go, wrestling needs an audience?
I see certain people have thrived. Like Bailey has thrived. Like like Britt Baker has thrived
Yeah.
so much throughout the last year. Like that's just me talking women, like women alone. Like Roman Reigns has obviously built his empire. Sasha Banks has built her empire and emerged like huge. So I think it depends on the person. I think there are certain moments it's like, oh, it doesn't go over as well because they don't have the audience to feed off of.
Hmm.
But also other people have taken advantage and really grabbed it by the balls
Hmm.
opportunity and really thrived. Like again, Bailey had a historic last
Oh
year run
man.
during her SmackDown Women's Championship reign, obviously with Sasha Banks and all of that. So I would say certain people obviously have thrived, but there's definitely other moments where I mean it could have gone a little bit better. So it's really both ends of the spectrum for me.
Yeah, I think one of the moments where I realized maybe like although I'm very grateful for this era of time that we were still able to watch wrestling, whether it be AEW, whether it be whatever
Hmm.
company that you're watching,
Hmm.
but I think one of the times where I really realized that there was no fans was the Rumble. And it was like watching the Rumble and like, yes, okay, the Thunderdome looks visually really cool. They're able to do a lot of cool little tricks with
Hmm.
cameras and just their screens and everything like that. But just that constant like ambient kind of recycled noise that they use for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. I just remember like Victoria coming out and I was like, man, like obviously I was losing my mind and everyone in the house that I was watching with was having a good time. But I was like, if only that had Christian. I think it's Christian
My
coming
God,
out of
I
the
cried when
Rumble.
Christian
Me
came out. That one,
too.
I mean, granted, I knew Victoria Lisa Marie was coming back,
Yeah,
and like I was emotional with that. But when Christian came out, I was absolutely shocked. And again, I cried during that moment. And then when
me
they
too.
hugged in the
Oh,
ring, it was incredible.
and knowing that would probably be the last time they'll share a ring now is,
Yeah,
well, we would think,
yeah.
makes it all more special. Like you look back on that now and you're like, oh,
Christian.
they were low key saying goodbye. Not that they even
That was
knew.
actually unexpected too.
Yeah.
Like I was on FaceTime with my friend and then we both cried. We're like, Christian is back.
But imagine
Uh,
that reaction with a crowd. Like that would have been
yeah.
just huge, and that story with Edge and everything, it just would have been just so lovely. But I think yeah, Victoria coming out and stuff like that, and even the comedy spots I think in the women's Royal Rumble with Billy Kay and Billy and
With
Jilly
Jillian.
was so good, and I think that would have went over with a crowd. And I'm just like
Yeah.
that sucks, but. I'm grateful that we had wrestling because it could have easily been taken
Mhm.
away and we would have had nothing. And I would have gone insane in a time where we weren't really human contact was forbidden. It
Mhm.
was good to still have wrestling and that time in AEW where they had like the audience be additional wrestlers in the crowd, and then we obviously had the PC over on WWE side of things, and even Impact and NWA did. I know NWA went away for a little while, come back and whatever it may be, but I am glad to see that we're getting back and it's like, okay, we're getting back to fans. AEW now has full crowds for Dynamite. Am I
Mhm.
correct in saying? I don't watch a lot of AEW, but they now have full crowds. WWE obviously gearing up to go back on the road in a few weeks, and we're getting ready for Money in the Bank, and just to be able to envision that, and it's like, we got a ladder match with fans after last
And
year
it's
having.
not at a corporate building. I am so ready to go back to in the ring Money in the Bank. So ready.
I'm ready to, although I'm grateful we had something new with cinematic matches,
Yeah.
and I think they'll always be now a part of some layer of wrestling
Mhm.
somewhere. I'm glad they're going to be a bit more special again because obviously we had the great stuff with like the Boneyard match and Stadium Stampede and
Mhm.
everything else that we had in between. But I am glad that it's like let's get back in the ring and let's get back to an audience and let's do this because I'm just ready to. Money in the Bank could be the worst show possible, but I'll just be happy as this fans.
And I'm ready to be back in person and all of that.
Yeah.
I'm so much looking forward. Granted, hopefully nothing gets changed because you never know, but so many things have gotten postponed. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just all like put it into the air. It'll happen. It's fine. And let's put that into the
Manifest.
manifest that because um I just want it to be back to somewhat normal. I don't even know what normal is anymore, to be completely honest. I've forgotten what normal is and I don't know what normal looks like, but some kind of normal, some form of it, whatever it may
Pretty
be. But
much.
it's just I'm just ready to get back. But how much wrestling do you watch in a week? Are you watching everything? Are you watching nothing? What's your kind of zone in a week? What does your week look like with wrestling?
Honestly, it changes every week because
Yeah.
my day job schedule. So I I almost always miss at least two shows. Like
Hmm.
no most of the time I miss Monday Night Raw, except for like I almost always work Monday nights, except for like the last month I was off. But now I'm back to my consistent schedule of working Monday nights, and then sometimes I work Friday nights, or sometimes I work Tuesday nights and miss NXT, and then sometimes I work Thursday nights, and I hate missing pay-per-views. Oh, it's so annoying
Hmm.
when I miss pay-per-views. So honestly, most of the time I maybe get to watch one show live per week because either I have an interview or I'm at work or something. So most of the time I have to watch it the next day, or sometimes I just won't watch it at all because Twitter is right there.
Yeah, that's what I'm like as well. I can never watch my favorite show of the week is NXT. I can never watch it live because I
Mhm.
work a short shift in the morning on a
Yeah.
Wednesday, so I can't
Mhm.
watch it live. So I usually watch it on a Wednesday afternoon. Like after I've done recording here, I'll go and watch NXT. But
Mhm.
I'm like you. I have my job kind of gets in the way of wrestling. I'm usually off on a Monday morning, so I can always watch pay per views. Granted, then I'm moving to Saturday nights for some things in the States, so it'll be Sunday morning here, and I work Sundays. I'll have to watch them on the delay, but
I can't even. Oh wait, we're back.
it's
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. It like the
oh no,
audio totally cut out. I don't know if
oh
it was
no.
on my end or yours. I couldn't even hear
I
you.
I have no idea. Listen, for all the things that technology is great for, sometimes it can really piss me off. I'm just like, just work how you're meant
Yeah.
to work, please. But basically, yeah, I was just saying, like, it's some pay per views are moving to Saturdays and whatever it
Yeah.
may be. I know the schedule's all kind of everywhere at the moment, but I'm excited. I'm just excited for wrestling to be back to being wrestling again because I think we've stalled long enough, and it's time to
I'm
get some
so
things
ready.
rolling. I'm
It's
ready.
been so long. It's been like 16 months now, almost at this point, and I am just so ready to be back. I miss that environment so much.
Oh, man, I'm ready for everything to be back to somewhat normal.
Hmm.
But what's on the agenda for you now? What have you got? Any things coming up that you want to promote or whatever, anything like that? Because now's your chance. I want to hear what's coming up for Ella.
Um, there's one thing that I can't talk about yet, but what I can say, like I said earlier, obviously I will be attending NWA and Power and
Oh
that whole
yeah.
weekend, but also that same weekend will be Pro Wrestling Eve's Wrestle Queendom 4 event, which leading up almost the entire month of August, at least we're going to have a bunch of interviews with the talent from Pro Wrestling Eve. I will also be having some talent from Empower, and the card is
Ooh.
stacking up so well from for right now. Obviously, it's not filled yet and nothing has been publicly announced, so I don't want to spoil anything, but I will definitely in the month of August anyway be having a bunch of interviews for Pro Wrestling Eve and a few for NWA Empower leading up to it, and then be doing some live coverage from there. My first time really ever doing live interviews during a
Ooh.
weekend or live coverage or whatever, so that'll be fun. Kind of nervous for it, but that's coming up in the month of August. And then obviously, I have a 2-year anniversary show planned. I don't know when this is going to go out, but that's July 16th.
It'll be out before
Um,
this.
yeah, okay. I think I'm going to end up doing a Q&A episode. I haven't done a solo show literally since episode 4 of
Oh
my
wow.
podcast, so it's been a long time coming. So I think for that one, I'm going to leave the floor open to listeners, and I haven't officially made that announcement yet, but so I guess you're hearing it hear
Ooh,
it first. So
exclusive
I'm going to be
guys.
doing a Q&A episode for my 2-year anniversary show, leaving the floor basically open to you guys on wrestling, lifestyle, random questions, basically anything.
Yeah, that sounds cool. It's exciting stuff coming up for you. I'm so happy that you took the time today to talk to me because I was so excited about this chat and I was just like I'm just gonna reach out and see if you want to and but yeah it's been awesome. So thank you for coming on and everything like that. Obviously I well you can't see but everyone that's watching this here on YouTube you can see Ella's Twitter at the bottom there. But where can we find you on socials if you want to plug any of that stuff? Go for it.
Oh gosh, how much time you got? I'm kidding. You can follow me on Twitter at it's Ella J, and you can follow a Wrestling Gal podcast on Twitter and Instagram at a Wrestling Gal, and listen on all your major podcasting platforms like Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. There's so many more I'm missing, but basically anywhere you find your podcast. You can also find me on WrestleZone and SE Scoops for some women's wrestling columns. And I also do women's wrestling focus on SE Scoops YouTube channel, which is a bi weekly show. And you can find me on Bell to Bells for some interviews coming up. I'm super excited for those. And again, don't forget to listen to the Gawcast and Gaw TV.
Man, I mean, it's just so cool to. I love
Oh,
hearing
it's
everything that you're
crazy.
doing because it's cool. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at @JoshRobinson_00. And you know me from Love Wrestling, and you can follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/JoshRobinson00. I'm usually streaming 4 or 5 times a week. I think everyone's pretty used to my schedule at this point. I stream when I can because I have a day job, so sometimes it gets a little bit in the way. But you know, I gotta pay my rent. I gotta pay my bills, guys. I'm sorry. But you
I
know where
got
to find
bills
me.
to pay too. Yeah, I feel you.
But I'm always tweeting some nonsense, and it's usually about being just a happy little gay boy that I am over here. So come and talk to me about that. It is the end of Pride Month at the time of recording. Don't forget, everybody, this is just I had this thought, and I said this on Love Wrestling the other day, but I thought I'd say it here just as we're wrapping things up. Pride Month is coming to an end, and it is really important that everyone did celebrate Pride in this time. But don't forget, when it goes to July 1st, it's still a thing that's everyone within that community is still going through. And I think some people are just like, I'm just going to change my logo and then I'm going to move on from that kind of stuff, and no one really gives it any attention. But it's 24/7. It's 24/7 that we've got to live through this kind of stuff. So, and I've been very vocal about the fact that I've had, you know, some homophobic things that have happened to me through content, and it's a con of being on the internet, but it's a thing that happens. So anything you want to add to that? Because it's, you know, it's the end of Pride Month and everything like that. It does continue.
As somebody, oh gosh, this is my like first public
Oh,
forum.
feel
uh,
free to void the question if you don't want to. But
no, but as somebody who I guess has recently um really come into her own with like figuring out her identity and all that, again, like Josh said, this is something that is so important and that continues on, that is not just in the month of June but is all year round, every single day. And again, it's so important to include everybody in the LGBTQA plus community. There are so many amazing people out there, some who haven't even fully expressed themselves, that are waiting in the wings. And again, it it's nobody's decision but yours to determine when or how you should come out, as they say. If you don't feel comfortable with it, it's your decision at the end of the day. But again, in my opinion, love is love when everybody says
yeah.
that, and it's so important to embrace that and acknowledge the representation, not only in this wrestling community but in general too. And so I have a special place in my heart as somebody now who is I guess publicly a part of the LGBTQA plus community.
Yes, I was yeah. I've had my own thoughts on that. Everyone knows how I feel and stuff
Mhm.
like that. I'm out and proud, and I think I just echo what you said because I think it's very important to, you know, there's a lot of people that are out and proud, and some people aren't like that. And that's okay. However you want to express it or don't want to express it is completely on each person. But I think it's just really important to continue to support the people within this because not every day is easy. Discovering who you are sometimes is really confusing and it's really hard. So I guess for anyone that follows any of my stuff, any of Ella's stuff, I think I can pretty confidently speak for both of us when I say that we're very proud of who we are, but it's not always as like happy and rainbows as it looks like sometimes. It can be really difficult. I still have days, I haven't been out all that long, just over a year. I still have days where I'm like, what is this? I don't really understand. You feel pretty down in yourself. It's just remember, 30 days in June, it continues before and after that. So just always continue to support. And just like Ella said, whenever it's your time, it's your time. You know when it's time to kind of, me and Ella have privately on DMs and stuff like that, and we've kind of done and spoke about that. But it is, whenever it's your time, it's your time. So just love who you are. Love is love, and continue to wave that flag high, because I think it's really important for both of us. And I think you done a great job. I continue to do my stuff, and we're just kind of living our lives, and I think that's most important.
And I want to thank you too for being such a positive figure and embracing everybody in like this specific community. And as somebody, like you said, we had talked privately in messages before, and I have with a few people prior to that, because this
Hmm.
is something that's been going on for the last 2 years, and it's
Hmm.
really,
Yeah.
hindered me in a lot of aspects. But like you said, there really is no right or wrong time. One's own personal decision, and if you're not ready, then that's totally valid. Again, like,
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for a long time, and this is
Me
still
either.
something I'm adjusting to, even talking about right now for really the first time
Yeah.
publicly. It's something that doesn't go away, but there's other people like Josh who is incredible. And if there's somebody who is in this community, like Josh himself has been so gracious with me, like, reach out, like, we're there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying that I always have the right answers. I just have my
Yeah.
journey. I just have my experience. But all I can offer you is some advice, and I can offer you what I did. Or, I'm sure people will come to you when you feel comfortable and everything like that. So I just think it's really important to, if anything, with my content, is that I put 100% of myself into stuff, and I give you 100% of me. And I think it's just important to embrace everything that comes along with that. And there is going to be times where it's going to happen in your life where someone doesn't accept you, or someone doesn't agree and just tries to be a troll. And I think it's also equally as important to kind of deal with that the way that you want to deal with it. And I deal with it in a way that is kind of on a public front. But it happens. It's just a part of life. So just remember, again, Pride Month is coming to an end, or at the time of recording, we're on the last day of Pride Month for me. I know it's not the 30th yet for you, but it's the 30th of June here.
Mhm.
So just continue to support, continue to love one another, whatever that may be: gender, sexuality, race, religion, whatever it may be. Just, we need to learn to love a little bit more, because I think the world can get pretty dark, and we focus on the bad stuff in the world a lot. Like, we talked about a pandemic for the first conversation that we had before we recorded, and it's like, I hope we can I just want to embrace the lighter parts of the world. And I think it would just, I know it's easy to say, but the world would be a happier place if we could just all learn to love and accept one another instead of pointing out our differences.
I agree completely. Like, you said it how you said it perfectly.
But on a lighter note, we are going to wrap things up here. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on all the socials. I'm sure you'll see Ella pop up in many different aspects as we lead up to Empower and everything that goes around that, and that whole weekend, and everything else that's going on in wrestling. Learn to love one another. My name is Josh Robinson. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Are We Recording Yet? I'll see you for some more Love Wrestling work. I've got some Legacy ofs. Next week will be the Legacy of Lita. So it's Lita then Trish, guys. So we're doing Team Bestie. So everyone loves Lita and Trish. So, I mean, come on. Continue to do that. And we'll see you soon. Peace out, everyone.